The global economy is a complex and ever-changing landscape. It has experienced periods of remarkable growth and prosperity. However, it has also faced times of significant hardship and decline. Among the most severe economic downturns are economic depressions. These periods are characterized by prolonged contractions in economic activity, widespread unemployment, and significant social upheaval. The mere mention of the word depression evokes images of the Great Depression of the 1930s, a period of unprecedented economic hardship that left an indelible mark on the world. While the global economy has undergone significant transformations since the 1930s, the threat of economic depressions has not dissipated. In recent decades, the world has witnessed several economic crises, including the Asian financial crisis of 1997 to 1998, the Russian financial crisis of 1998, and the global financial crisis of 2008 to 2009. These crises, while not reaching the depths of the Great Depression, have highlighted the interconnectedness of the global economy and the speed at which economic shocks can spread. Today, as the world grapples with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, rising inflation, and geopolitical tensions, concerns about the possibility of another economic depression are growing. Understanding the factors that have historically led to depressions and recognizing the warning signs of an impending economic crisis is crucial for policymakers, businesses, and individuals alike. By examining past events and analyzing current economic trends, we can gain valuable insights into the potential risks and prepare for the possibility of future economic downturns. While predicting the future is inherently uncertain, understanding the patterns and indicators of economic depressions can help us navigate the complexities of the global economy and mitigate the potential consequences of a severe economic downturn. An economic depression is not merely a severe recession, it is a prolonged and devastating period of economic decline that can have far-reaching consequences for individuals, businesses, and societies. To fully comprehend the gravity of an economic depression, it is essential to distinguish it from a recession, a more common and less severe economic downturn. A recession is generally defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth, as measured by a country's gross domestic product, GDP. Recessions are often characterized by job losses, reduced consumer spending, and a decline in business investment. However, recessions are typically short-lived, lasting for several months to a year, and the economy tends to rebound relatively quickly. An economic depression, on the other hand, is a much more severe and prolonged economic downturn. While there is no universally agreed-upon definition, depressions are generally characterized by a significant and sustained contraction in GDP, typically lasting for several years. During a depression, unemployment rates can soar to unprecedented levels. Businesses fail at alarming rates, and the financial system can experience widespread instability. The Great Depression, for example, saw the US unemployment rate reach 25% and global trade plummet by over 50%. The consequences of an economic depression extend far beyond the realm of economics. Depressions can lead to social unrest, political instability, and increased poverty and inequality. The prolonged economic hardship experienced during a depression can have a profound impact on individuals' mental and physical health, as well as their overall well-being. Moreover, the scars of an economic depression can linger for generations, shaping economic policies, social attitudes, and individual behaviors long after the immediate crisis has passed. Understanding the defining characteristics of an economic depression is crucial for comprehending the potential magnitude of such an event and the importance of taking proactive measures to mitigate its risks. While the term economic depression often evokes images of widespread hardship and economic collapse, its precise definition remains somewhat elusive. Unlike a recession, which has a more concrete definition of 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth, a depression is characterized more by its severity, duration, and pervasive impact on all aspects of the economy and society. Economists generally agree that a depression involves a significant and prolonged decline in economic activity, typically lasting for several years and resulting in a substantial decrease in a country's gross domestic product, GDP. This decline is usually accompanied by a sharp rise in unemployment as businesses are forced to lay off workers due to falling demand and reduced production. The unemployment rate during a depression can reach double digits, leaving a significant portion of the workforce without jobs and struggling to make ends meet. Furthermore, a depression is often marked by deflation, a sustained decrease in the general price level of goods and services. While falling prices might seem beneficial at first glance, deflation can be detrimental to economic growth. When prices are falling, consumers and businesses tend to postpone purchases, anticipating even lower prices in the future. This delay in spending can further reduce demand, leading to a vicious cycle of economic contraction. In addition to these core economic indicators, a depression also manifests in a broader societal context. The widespread unemployment, poverty, and financial distress can lead to social unrest, political instability, and a decline in overall well-being. The Great Depression, for instance, witnessed widespread bank failures, farm foreclosures, and the emergence of shantytowns known as Hoovervilles, highlighting the profound social and human costs of such a severe economic downturn. While economic indicators like GDP, unemployment, and inflation provide valuable insights into the severity of a depression, they only tell part of the story. The true cost of an economic depression is most acutely felt in the lives of ordinary people who bear the brunt of the crisis. The loss of jobs, homes, and savings can have devastating and long-lasting effects on individuals, families, and communities. During a depression, unemployment becomes a pervasive issue, affecting people from all walks of life. As businesses struggle to stay afloat, layoffs become widespread, leaving millions without a source of income. The loss of a job not only impacts an individual's financial security, but also takes a toll on their mental and emotional well-being. The stress and uncertainty of unemployment can lead to anxiety, depression, and other health problems, further exacerbating the challenges faced by individuals and families. The financial strain caused by a depression can also lead to a surge in home foreclosures as people struggle to keep up with mortgage payments. Losing one's home can be a traumatic experience, uprooting families and communities. The loss of a home not only represents a significant financial setback, but also signifies the loss of stability, security, and a sense of belonging. Moreover, a depression can wipe out years of savings and investments, leaving people financially devastated. The stock market crash of 1929, which marked the beginning of the Great Depression, saw millions of Americans lose their life savings as stock prices plummeted. The collapse of banks and financial institutions further compounded the crisis, eroding trust in the financial system and leaving many with little hope for the future. Beyond these immediate and tangible impacts, economic depressions can have long-lasting consequences for individuals and society as a whole. The experience of living through a depression can shape attitudes towards work, risk, and government intervention in the economy. It can also lead to increased social and economic inequality, as the most vulnerable segments of society often bear the disproportionate brunt of the crisis. The Great Depression, the most severe economic downturn in modern history, cast a long shadow over the 1930s, but its roots can be traced back to the preceding decade. The 1920s, often romanticized as the Roaring Twenties, were a period of significant economic growth and social change in the United States. The rise of mass production, consumerism, and technological advancements like the automobile and the radio fueled an economic boom. However, beneath the surface of this apparent prosperity lay a number of imbalances and vulnerabilities that would ultimately contribute to the Great Depression. One such vulnerability was the rapid expansion of credit and speculation in the stock market. Throughout the 1920s, stock prices rose at an unsustainable rate, fueled by easy access to credit and a widespread belief that the market would continue to climb indefinitely. This speculative frenzy led to a disconnect between stock prices and the underlying value of companies. Investors, enticed by the allure of quick profits, poured their savings into the market, often borrowing heavily to do so. This created a highly leveraged and unstable financial system, ripe for a correction. Moreover, the agricultural sector, a significant part of the US economy at the time, faced challenges throughout the 1920s. Overproduction, falling crop prices, and rising debt levels plagued farmers, leading to a decline in rural incomes and purchasing power. This weakness in the agricultural sector would have ripple effects throughout the broader economy. The date etched in history as the start of the Great Depression is October 29, 1929, now infamously known as Black Tuesday. On this day, the US stock market experienced an unprecedented collapse, wiping out billions of dollars in value and shattering the illusion of unending prosperity. The crash, a culmination of the speculative excesses and underlying economic weaknesses of the Roaring Twenties, sent shockwaves throughout the US and the global economy. The seeds of the crash were sown in the weeks leading up to Black Tuesday as stock prices began to fluctuate wildly, reflecting growing investor anxiety and uncertainty. On October 24th, now known as Black Thursday, the market experienced its first major decline, triggering a wave of panic selling. While efforts were made to stabilize the market in the following days, they proved futile in the face of overwhelming fear and a loss of confidence. When the market opened on Black Tuesday, the selling reached a fever pitch. Investors, desperate to unload their holdings, flooded the market with sell orders, but there were few buyers to be found. As a result, stock prices plummeted, with some falling as much as 10% in a matter of minutes. By the end of the day, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, a key market index, had lost nearly 13%. Marking the largest one-day percentage drop in its history. The crash of 1929 was not an isolated event, but rather a symptom of deeper systemic problems in the US economy. The speculative bubble in the stock market, fueled by easy credit and a lack of regulatory oversight, had created a house of cards that was bound to collapse. The crash exposed the fragility of the financial system and ushered in a period of unprecedented economic hardship and uncertainty. The stock market crash of 1929 was not the sole cause of the Great Depression, but it acted as a catalyst, setting in motion a chain of events that would plunge the US and much of the world into a decade-long economic abyss. The crash shattered confidence in the financial system, leading to a wave of bank failures, a contraction in credit, and a sharp decline in investment and consumer spending. In the immediate aftermath of the crash, banks, heavily invested in the stock market, faced massive losses and a surge in withdrawals as panicked depositors rushed to withdraw their savings. This run on banks led to a liquidity crisis, forcing many banks to close their doors. The collapse of the banking system further choked off credit, making it difficult for businesses to obtain loans and for consumers to access their savings. As businesses struggled to cope with declining sales and a shortage of credit, they were forced to lay off workers, leading to a sharp rise in unemployment. The unemployment rate, which had been relatively low in the 1920s, soared to unprecedented levels, reaching nearly 25% by 1933. Millions of Americans found themselves jobless, and many lost their homes and life savings. The decline in consumer spending, coupled with the contraction in investment, led to a steep drop in demand for goods and services. Businesses, facing declining profits and mounting inventories, were forced to cut production, further exacerbating the economic downturn. The spiral of declining demand, falling production, and rising unemployment created a vicious cycle that proved difficult to break. While the stock market crash of 1929 is often cited as the trigger for the Great Depression, the economic landscape of the 1920s was already riddled with vulnerabilities that set the stage for a major downturn. One of the key factors contributing to the Great Depression was a growing imbalance between production and consumption, particularly in the agricultural and manufacturing sectors. During the 1920s, technological advancements in agriculture led to significant increases in crop yields. However, this surge in production outpaced the growth in demand, leading to a glut of agricultural products and plummeting prices. Farmers, already burdened by debt, faced mounting losses and were forced to sell their crops at a loss or watch them rot in the fields. The decline in farm incomes had a ripple effect throughout the rural economy, reducing demand for manufactured goods and services. Similarly, the manufacturing sector experienced a period of overproduction during the 1920s. New technologies and mass production techniques enabled factories to churn out goods at an unprecedented rate. However, wages for workers did not keep pace with the growth in productivity, leading to a widening gap between the rich and the poor. This income inequality meant that a significant portion of the population lacked the purchasing power to absorb the increasing supply of goods, further contributing to the imbalance between production and consumption. As inventories of unsold goods piled up, businesses were forced to cut back on production, leading to layoffs and further reductions in consumer spending. This vicious cycle of overproduction, falling demand, and rising unemployment created a downward spiral that would ultimately engulf the entire economy. The experience of the 1920s highlights the importance of a balanced economy where wages and productivity grow in tandem, ensuring that consumers have the purchasing power to sustain economic growth. The speculative frenzy in the stock market during the Roaring Twenties played a significant role in setting the stage for the Great Depression. Fueled by easy access to credit and a widespread belief that stock prices would continue to rise indefinitely, investors poured their savings and borrowed heavily to buy stocks, driving prices to unsustainable levels. Throughout the 1920s, stock prices rose at an unprecedented rate, far outpacing the growth of the underlying companies or the overall economy. This disconnect between stock valuations and economic fundamentals was driven by speculation, with investors buying stocks not based on their intrinsic value but on the expectation of selling them later at a higher price. This speculative bubble was further inflated by margin buying, where investors borrowed heavily from brokers to purchase stocks, amplifying both potential gains and losses. The allure of quick profits and the fear of missing out drew in a wide range of investors, from seasoned professionals to ordinary citizens with little understanding of the stock market. However, the bubble was bound to burst, as stock prices had become detached from economic reality. When the market inevitably corrected, the consequences were swift and devastating. As stock prices began to fall in late 1929, investors who had bought on margin faced margin calls, requiring them to put up more cash or sell their holdings at a loss. This triggered a wave of panic selling, sending stock prices plummeting and wiping out billions of dollars in wealth. The crash exposed the dangers of excessive speculation and the risks associated with a highly leveraged financial system. The Federal Reserve's decision to tighten credit in the late 1920s is widely believed to have exacerbated the Great Depression. Initially, the Fed's loose monetary policy fueled the economic boom of the Roaring Twenties, but also speculative excesses. By the late 1920s, the Fed raised interest rates to curb speculation, inadvertently constricting the economy. Businesses cut back on investment and laid off workers while consumers reduced spending. The Fed's actions contributed to the downward spiral of declining demand, falling production, and rising unemployment. The 1930s highlighted the need for balanced monetary policy to foster growth while guarding against speculation and inflation. The 2008 financial crisis was a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of the global economy. At its heart lay the subprime mortgage market, built on risky lending practices. Financial institutions extended mortgages to subprime borrowers, often with adjustable interest rates. These mortgages were bundled into mortgage-backed securities and sold worldwide, spreading risk. When interest rates rose, many subprime borrowers defaulted, leading to a surge in foreclosures. The value of mortgage-backed securities plummeted, inflicting heavy losses on investors. The crisis underscored the dangers of financial excesses and the need for robust risk management. Lehman Brothers' collapse in September 2008 marked a turning point in the financial crisis. Lehman's heavy exposure to toxic assets led to its downfall, freezing credit markets. Banks, fearing further losses, became reluctant to lend, impacting the real economy. The crisis spread globally, leading to a recession with rising unemployment and declining trade. Governments and central banks took unprecedented steps to stabilize the financial system. The 2008 crisis led to a re-evaluation of financial regulations and risk management. It highlighted the importance of maintaining a stable and resilient financial system. As the global economy faces uncertainties, concerns about a potential economic depression loom. Resurgent inflation driven by supply chain disruptions and rising energy costs is a red flag. Households with fixed incomes are strained, and businesses raising prices may dampen consumer spending. Record levels of consumer debt raise concerns about the sustainability of growth. Rising interest rates or a recession could lead to defaults and reduced consumer spending. The widening wealth gap represents another vulnerability in the global economy. The global financial system's interconnectedness creates channels for economic shocks to spread. Heavy reliance on debt to finance growth creates vulnerabilities. A sudden spike in interest rates could lead to defaults and a credit crunch. The complexity of financial instruments makes systemic risks harder to manage. Geopolitical tensions, like the war in Ukraine, add uncertainty and strain the global economy. These interconnected risks could amplify each other, pushing the global economy toward a precipice. Consumer debt, while driving growth, creates vulnerabilities in the current economic climate. Record levels of debt leave households vulnerable to economic shocks. Non-mortgage debt, like credit card and auto loans, is particularly concerning. Economic downturns could lead to defaults, bankruptcies, and reduced consumer spending. Reliance on consumer debt for growth creates a fragile system prone to boom and bust cycles. Low interest rates can fuel speculative investments, creating unsustainable bubbles. When bubbles burst, it triggers defaults and a credit crunch, contracting economic activity. Debt-driven consumption can mask underlying economic weaknesses. Policymakers may delay necessary reforms, believing in continued prosperity. When the credit cycle turns, these weaknesses are exposed, deepening economic downturns. Central banks use interest rates to manage inflation, stimulate growth, and maintain stability. Low rates have supported recovery but fueled concerns about inflation and asset bubbles. Rising rates aim to cool the economy and control inflation. Higher borrowing costs constrain businesses and consumers, reducing spending and investment. Rapid rate hikes can shock the financial system, risking recession. Central banks must balance controlling inflation with maintaining economic growth. Careful calibration of interest rate policies is crucial to avoid destabilizing the financial system. Imagining a modern economic depression reveals swift, severe, and far-reaching effects. Economic output would contract sharply, with GDP declining. Consumer confidence would plummet, halting spending and forcing business closures. Unemployment would soar, leaving millions jobless and facing uncertain futures. The stock market would decline, wiping out wealth and jeopardizing retirement savings. The loss of confidence would reflect a profound economic crisis. The human toll lives upended, futures uncertain. Beyond the stark economic indicators, the true cost of a depression would be measured in the countless lives upended and futures cast into uncertainty. The human toll of such a crisis would be profound, leaving deep scars on individuals, families, and communities for years, if not generations, to come. The loss of a job, often a source of not only income but also identity and purpose, can have devastating psychological effects, leading to increased stress, anxiety, depression, and even despair. Families, once accustomed to a certain standard of living, would face difficult choices, forced to cut back on essentials, downsize their homes, and postpone dreams for a better future. The social fabric of communities would be strained as neighbors struggle to help each other while grappling with their own hardships. As unemployment rises and incomes fall, so too would the demand for goods and services, leading to a deflationary spiral. Businesses already struggling to stay afloat would be forced to further cut prices in a desperate attempt to attract increasingly scarce customers. This deflation, while seemingly beneficial to consumers in the short term, would further depress economic activity as businesses see their profits dwindle and their ability to invest and create jobs evaporate. The social safety net, designed to provide a lifeline for those in need, would be stretched to its breaking point, as the demand for unemployment benefits, food assistance, and other social services surges. Governments, already grappling with mounting deficits and shrinking tax revenues, would face difficult choices, forced to make tough decisions about where to allocate scarce resources. The social contract, the unspoken agreement between citizens and their government, would be tested as never before. The interconnected nature of the global economy, while fostering growth and efficiency in prosperous times, becomes a conduit for rapid and widespread disruption during a depression. The intricate web of supply chains responsible for the seamless flow of goods, raw materials, and components across borders would unravel, leaving businesses and consumers grappling with shortages, delays, and skyrocketing costs. The intricate network of manufacturing hubs, transportation systems, and distribution centers that underpin global trade would grind to a halt as demand plummets and businesses struggle to stay afloat. Factories, once humming with activity, would fall silent as orders dry up and production lines are idled. Shipping containers, once symbols of global commerce, would pile up at ports, their contents stranded as buyers disappear and trade routes dwindle. The just-in-time inventory systems, designed to maximize efficiency and minimize costs by delivering goods precisely when needed, would prove woefully inadequate in the face of widespread disruptions. Businesses, accustomed to relying on the smooth functioning of global supply chains, would find themselves scrambling to secure essential goods and materials, often facing long lead times, dwindling inventories, and skyrocketing prices. The interconnectedness of global supply chains means that disruptions in one part of the world can quickly cascade across borders, impacting businesses and consumers far removed from the initial shock. A shortage of semiconductors manufactured in Asia could cripple the production of automobiles in Europe, while a disruption in the supply of oil from the Middle East could send energy prices soaring worldwide, further fueling inflation and exacerbating the economic downturn. An economic depression, with its devastating impact on employment, incomes, and social safety nets, would inevitably exacerbate existing inequalities, pushing millions further into poverty and straining the social fabric of nations. The most vulnerable segments of society, those already struggling with poverty, unemployment, and inadequate access to healthcare, education, and other essential services, would bear the brunt of the crisis, their lives and livelihoods upended by forces beyond their control. As unemployment soars and businesses shutter, millions would find themselves struggling to make ends meet, forced to deplete their savings, liquidate assets, and rely on government assistance just to survive. Lines at food banks and homeless shelters would lengthen, a stark reminder of the human cost of economic hardship. The gap between the haves and the have-nots, already a chasm in many societies, would widen into an abyss, fueling resentment, social unrest, and a loss of faith in institutions. The social contract, the unspoken agreement between citizens and their government, would be tested as never before. Governments already grappling with shrinking tax revenues and mounting deficits would face immense pressure to provide relief to those in need while simultaneously trying to stabilize the economy. The ability of governments to respond effectively to such a crisis would depend on a multitude of factors, including their fiscal health, the strength of their social safety nets, and the level of trust they command from their citizens. The erosion of trust, a hallmark of times of economic hardship, would permeate all levels of society. Citizens, disillusioned by the perceived inability of their leaders to address their plight, might grow increasingly skeptical of government institutions, traditional media outlets, and even established economic theories. This loss of trust, if left unaddressed, could have long-lasting consequences, hindering economic recovery, fueling social divisions, and undermining the very foundations of democratic societies. While predicting the timing and severity of an economic depression remains an imprecise science, taking proactive steps to prepare for such an event can provide a measure of control and resilience in the face of uncertainty. Just as one would prepare for a natural disaster, taking steps to fortify one's financial well-being, acquire essential skills, and build a network of support can make a significant difference in navigating the challenges of an economic downturn. One of the most crucial steps in preparing for a depression is to reduce debt and build a financial cushion. High levels of debt, particularly consumer debt, can become an unbearable burden during times of economic hardship, as job losses and reduced income make it difficult to meet financial obligations. Prioritizing debt reduction, starting with high-interest debt like credit cards, can free up cash flow and reduce financial vulnerability. Building an emergency fund, ideally containing 3 to 6 months' worth of living expenses, can provide a financial buffer to cover essential expenses in the event of job loss or unexpected emergencies. In addition to bolstering one's financial foundation, acquiring in-demand skills and knowledge can enhance employability and provide a competitive edge in a challenging job market. Focusing on skills that are transferable across industries, such as critical thinking, problem-solving, communication, and technology proficiency, can make one a more attractive candidate to potential employers. Pursuing additional education or training in fields that are expected to remain in high demand, even during an economic downturn, can further enhance job prospects. Building a strong social network can also provide invaluable support during times of economic hardship. Connecting with family, friends, neighbors, and community groups can offer emotional support, practical assistance, and access to information and resources that might otherwise be difficult to obtain. Joining professional organizations or networking groups can also provide opportunities for career advancement even during a downturn, as businesses often rely on referrals and personal connections when making hiring decisions. The spectre of an economic depression, a period of prolonged economic hardship and societal upheaval, looms as a stark reminder of the inherent fragility of even the most robust economies. While predicting the future with certainty remains an elusive goal, understanding the historical patterns, recognizing the warning signs, and preparing for a range of potential scenarios can equip individuals, businesses, and policymakers with the tools and resilience needed to navigate the uncertainties that lie ahead. The echoes of past depressions, from the Great Depression of the 1930s to the more recent global financial crisis of 2008, underscore the interconnectedness of the global economy, the speed at which financial contagion can spread, and the profound human toll that economic crises can inflict. The current economic climate, marked by rising inflation, growing debt levels, geopolitical tensions, and persistent inequality, presents a complex and challenging landscape, one that demands vigilance, adaptability, and a willingness to learn from past mistakes. While the prospect of an economic depression may seem daunting, it is essential to remember that such events, while disruptive and painful, are not unprecedented. History is replete with examples of societies that have weathered economic storms, emerging from periods of hardship with renewed resilience, innovation, and a deeper understanding of the factors that contribute to both prosperity and decline. The path forward lies in acknowledging the risks, embracing informed decision-making, and fostering a spirit of collective responsibility. By heeding the lessons of the past, strengthening our financial foundations, investing in our skills and knowledge, and supporting our communities, we can navigate the uncertain waters ahead, not with a sense of fear, but with a spirit of preparedness, determination, and hope.